Today, our guest is tenor Mark Anderson, a friend, tremendous colleague, and a tremendous talent. Mark, welcome.
Thank you.
Where were you actually born and raised?
I was born and raised on a dead-end street in Chicago, 4654 North Greenview. My grandmother owned an apartment building that had 6 apartments in it, all relatives.
Were your parents musical?
Yes, my mother was a country and western singer who appeared on the WLS Barn Dance in Chicago with little Georgie Goebel.
Oh,
She
absolutely.
was in the USO. I think the act was Three Queens and a Jack that worked in the USO. And then my father was a jazz musician who played the tenor saxophone. And he was in the Army Air Force Band in the World War II era.
Uh-huh.
And my mom came through in a USO troop, and I think he was drunk one day and tripped over her, and the rest is history. Because she's 4'11" and he is 6'4".
Was that the draw for you? Was seeing your parents do it, or did you? What kind of feelings did you have towards?
Excellent question. By the time I was 3, I expected music to be a career. It's about 5. My father brought me up to the piano and told me, I don't have any living children that sing out of tune. That was the best Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star I've ever done.
Now, when did you actually start formally training in music?
About 3rd or 4th grade.
Okay, and you actually had a career as on stage, other than music, correct? As a child.
Yeah, when I was 9 years old, it was my first professional production. It was maybe 1960 or 61. It was Carousel, but I was hired as a ballet dancer, as one of the Snow Children. So my first jobs were as a dancer, and even as a child at the Lyric Opera in Chicago, because they use supers.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
I got to be in the debut performance of Alfredo Kraus.
Wow.
I mean, I got to do Tosca, Elixir of Love, Tannhauser, because I could actually shut up and stand still for 2.5 hours. It was great to sit there in this giant orchestra, and then, Lyric Opera, 6 floors up with these giant balconies, and, you're 9 or 10 and you walk out there and go, what the heck? I think I could like this.
And where did you go to high school?
I went to Francis W. Parker in Chicago, which is a private school in the Independent School League. And I think that has put out more people in the performance area, even though it's not a performance high school. Celeste Holm went there, the original Ado Annie in Oklahoma and Bright. Ann Hesh went there.
Wow.
Jennifer Beals, David Mamet, Billy Zane, Lisa Zane. Daryl Hannah was one, and so I went to school with some of these people. And, if you got talent, that ain't going to get it for you. You have to work hard. Show up on day one with everything memorized. Don't just learn your lines, learn everybody's line.
Sure.
Because one day you're not going to perform anymore. What if you have to direct it? You need to know the whole thing. And of course, back then there was summer stock. And in summer stock and stuff, you got a side script, which had 3 words that the person said before you and then your line. No idea what was going on in the scene, nothing. So it was a great learning experience. I got to be in incredible plays. Orson Bean, Jane Withers, Jane the Americans, Jane Morgan, Van Johnson. Wow. All these incredible people did some stock way back in the 50s and 60s. So
now, in high school, did you do the school shows?
Freshman year, they did Cry the Beloved Country. So
wow.
Sophomore year, they did Kiss Me Kate. And I got my first solo there where I was Bill Lucentio. Okay. Back then I could tap dance. So, that was a kind of a shoe-in. Junior year, we did Carousel and I was Mr. Snow. Okay. And senior year, the school administration decided we were doing too much music. So they canceled the musical. However, the choir director scheduled Orpheus, Gluck.
Oh, yes.
To sing the part of Orpheus, and we staged it. And Eurydice, or Eurydice, however you want to pronounce it, decided to be very dramatic, and I'm going to start, she is go on and on, and she dies on my leg. So I had to sing the whole Che farò senza Eurydice in English. I'm cleaning up my language with a very emotional dead cheerleader on my leg. We had literally no rehearsal. And really? Even though we had people in the orchestra that were from the Chicago Symphony, it was that plus the student orchestra. And there was where the conductor gives the downbeat, and Stravinsky moved in. They
Oh,
played, because the numbers didn't match up in the versions that they had. And they every note in the scale gets played there. And my teacher, who I loved, he was great, looks at me and goes, like this. So I remembered the number before, what key it was in, so I knew where to start my part. And I just started singing, and the pianist, played until they all figured out where they were, and then the orchestra came back in.
oh
But
my goodness. So now after high school, where did you go?
I went to Roosevelt University for 2 years to
Okay.
the conservatory,
Hmm.
which was also absolutely outstanding because you could not get to junior year if you didn't get, past music theory, music,
Sure.
piano playing, figured bass, harmony, oral training,
Right.
sight
Sure.
reading.
Sure.
Only two of us actually made it through the program to junior year. And
Really?
then I got
Wow.
offered an athletic scholarship to college for tennis because I also played tennis. And I transferred to Northeastern Illinois University.
Hmm.
And then I went out and was a teacher for a while. And then I got a scholarship, partial scholarship to Northwestern
Wow.
graduate school.
Yeah. Wow.
So, and that's where I was Margaret Hillis's, the founder and director of the Chicago Symphony Chorus's
Yeah.
graduate assistant. And that's where I met the voice teacher who really taught me how to sing, Norman Gilbranson.
Wow. Okay. And who was your actual first voice teacher besides your parents, of course?
Okay, you ready for this?
Yes.
Ramona Dunlap. Ramona
Really?
Dunlap was the first or second person to play Dorothy in a film version of The Wizard of Oz.
Wow.
And later on, now you go look these people up and go, holy cow.
Yeah.
I went to public school, K through 8, a Mr. George Arnott, who was
Yes.
very, very strict. Anderson, be here tomorrow at 8:15. I have something to show you. I thought, oh boy, my life's over. I don't know what it is I did, but that's it. So I go in and he sits me down and he puts the scrapbook in front of me and he opens it up. And there's a picture of him in his younger years holding this metal tray. And this guy singing like this. And he goes, that's Enrico Caruso. And that's me at the Met in the 1920s. I could barely hold on to that tray when he sang.
Wow.
It's obvious you're going to be a musician. Well, this is Enrico Caruso, probably the greatest opera singer that ever lived.
Sure.
And unfortunately, he was dying at the time. He
Huh.
only took a job teaching so he could get health insurance because he had some kind of cancer. And I don't think he lived 2 years after that. Great influence. And I actually played piano pretty well at the time, so I accompanied the girls' chorus that he started.
Wow.
It's important too in our careers that we try to do like what you and I talk about. You got to give it back.
That's right.
Somebody gave it to you. I didn't pay those guys a dime.
Right.
Obviously my piano teacher I paid, but they gave it to you, and your job is to suck as much of it as you can in and give it all back. We were doing a pension benefit concert with the Chicago Symphony at the Auditorium Theater, which is Hughes in Chicago, and it was being conducted by Franz Allers, who was the original conductor of the Rodgers and Hammerstein stuff on Broadway, and the Metropolitan baritone William Walker.
Yeah.
The famous one. He's backstage, and the orchestra is playing the Carousel Waltz. That was the first number. And he just takes a deep breath, and he looks at it, and he goes, folks, it don't get no better than this. My first audition for Chicago Symphony, the person before me was a world-class soprano named Joanne Pickens. She ended up doing solo stuff like that. And her second selection for Miss Hillis was Ride on King Jesus.
Oh, my.
And, so I come in to Miss Hillis, and I go, well, great, I get to follow that. She goes, don't worry, you're a tenor. It doesn't matter. She was absolutely awesome. She was a great teacher.
You're getting out of Northwestern. What did you do?
Okay, while I was at Northwestern and singing with the Chicago Symphony, I actually had a solo audition with Franz Allers.
Oh, wow.
Which, because we were doing, there's two fast stories. 1978, we sang at the White House Press Corps dinner. And I was chosen to sing Nothing in Life is Beautiful But Brother. There is one particular thing, like from South Pacific.
Yes.
And Miss Hillis says, no, Mark, it's not sung, it's only spoken. And I'm thinking like, you're not going to argue with Miss Hillis.
Sure.
And so the day before we go do it, she goes to the guy next to me and says, no, Kurt, you do it. Okay, big deal. We're friends. That's life. Shut up. She's giving you a million breaks. So about 2 years later, Franz Allers is coming to conduct us for Ravinia. And I got that solo again. And we go through Nothing Like a Dame. And Maestro Allers says, stop. None of you are right except for him. He was perfect. And everybody's going, oh, are we feeling better now that the guy who conducted it on Broadway said you did it right? And I said, yeah. And then I went to sing for him, and I sang Mr. Snow's song from Carousel, perfect tenor audition, 60 seconds long, high A at the end.
Right.
And so I finished that, and he says, you have performed this role many times, yeah? I said, yes. He goes, I want to hear una furtiva lagrima. And I said, well, I thought this was a musical comedy audition. I do know it, but I didn't bring the music. He goes, doesn't matter. And then he set me up with an audition in Broadway, on Broadway for Oklahoma.
Oh my.
And there was, I got to be Candide at Northwestern when they did Candide in '78 with a soprano, Catherine Caccavallo, who went on to become, I guess it's Carlotta in Phantom of the Opera.
Yes, that's great. Yes. Yes.
And so, but it's sort of like, good thing I had 11 years of ballet, because that's what synagogue was, ballet to music. But it was awesome because it's all a cappella.
Wow.
And so everything, the voices are the orchestra and the performance. So if you want anything that's good for ear training, sing in an Orthodox or a Reformed synagogue that doesn't have an organ.
You left Chicago and you came to the East Coast.
Yes.
And you landed in New Jersey. Yes. So how did you find that transition from Chicago to New Jersey?
Well, you want one fun story about that?
Sure.
So I was looking probably for a church job. You know, I was like 35 or something like that. So the choir director's there, and he said, "What would you like? What would you like?" I said, "What would you like me to sing?" And he said, "Well, do you know the arias from the Messiah?" I said, "Sure." So I sang "Comfort Ye in Every Valley," and he said, "How about If With All Your Hearts from Elijah?" And I'm thinking, wow, this must be really a high-level job, because those are 3 killer arias. First of all, you'd never sing "Bang Bang Bang," but you know.
No.
So I sang that. And afterward, he said, "Man, I'd love to have you." I said, "You know, fine. What's the pay?" And he said $750. And I said, $750 a month? That's, you know, about what I was making in Chicago. He said, "No, $7.50 an hour."
Oh my God.
And I told him, I said, you know, did you think I was going to sing? You know, first of all, that it cost, that's not even car fare to get here from where I live. You know, and I'm sure you looked at my resume and you probably pretty much knew that. How come you had me sing all these 3 arias? And then I felt so bad, because he said, well, I never get anyone who can actually sing them. So I was having a great time playing. Joan and I, my wife's a fantastic coloratura soprano.
Yes, she is.
We went to the Philly Singers auditions that they had when we first moved here. People at the door looking in going, who's that? There's not supposed to be anybody here like that.
Right.
And then I went, uh-oh. And then I go in and I sang, and the guy, after I sang Amor TVA, the Philly Singers started, and we went and didn't audition for that and got in. And while I was singing the Philly Singers, I think I sat next to Nancy.
Yes.
At one rehearsal, she goes, "Where do you live?" I said, "Merchantville." And she said, and Luke was the accompanist, and they said, "We need a tenor soloist at St. Pete's." And I went, "What that?" She goes, "It's a church 5 blocks from your house, stupid." I said, "I just moved here. I didn't know." I said, "Okay." So I came and tried out, and as far as I'm concerned, I think, aren't I still on experimental tryout there?
Yes,
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Me out. That was
20 some years later, yes.
20 years ago. I'm still waiting to see if you want to use me or not. So, but we had a great time there. It reminded me of singing in the church I grew up in. You know, there were like 3,800 families there. It was wonderful on Christmas Eve to sit there and see like 3,000 people all dressed up to the nines, you know, and you could sing for them. That was a reward enough in itself.
We did have a lot of fun, and you know, we did some great music. You did some great singing, and I couldn't have done it without you, because you know, a lot of people don't realize that, and they never knew that St. Pete's was really a volunteer choir, except for the 4 paid soloists. And of course, your Joan was there, and my Joan, and Nancy, Luke. I was fortunate for a long time to have you guys, and you know, we did some pretty big things.
One of my favorite things you did to me there was, we were doing a Christmas concert, and you know, everybody's doing their little solo. They say, "Oh, Mark, can you conduct this?" I said, "Sure." Is there any particular meter that this piece is in? And they said, you know, what's her name? The first the violinist, she goes, "It's in 4." I said, "Good. Here's what you learn when you have to conduct something you've never heard. look at the person singing and follow what they do. And I conducted you singing your solo. I hadn't heard it, didn't know. I don't even think I looked at the music. I just looked at you, and I conducted, and I went, "I'm going to get you for that." Very lucky in that my parents gave me fantastic advice. Dad had all these things. He said, like, if you work cheap, you are.
That
He
is
said,
correct.
someday, someone's going to come to you and they're going to ask you to sing for their wedding. And how much do you charge? $75. Oh, well, gee, the soprano at my church charges 15. Hire her.
Right.
My
Exactly.
dad also said things like, if you're up for a job and it's between you and someone else is starving to death, give them the job. One of the summer stock performances I was in was Bye Bye Birdie. They had Orson Bean,
Wow.
Jane Withers, and Jay and the Americans. And I was in 8th grade. And the director took me aside. He goes, "All right, kid, it's obvious you're going to do this. Let me give you a bit of wisdom." And he said, "Don't major in performance, major in education. You can take all the same performance courses. When you're done, you can get a teaching job, get a grade school teaching job. You're done every day at 3. You get regular checks and health insurance." And I thought that was very good advice, because you never want to wear that t-shirt that says singer, dancer, actor, waiter. Because that last line, if you're smart enough to do those first 3 at a national level or higher, you're smart enough to be a doctor or a
I
lawyer,
agree.
or an executive, because the executive brain function that's required to, like, remember Shakespeare and know what the heck he's talking
Mhm.
about, or to memorize a whole opera. I've never met a really, really good singer that was stupid. They
Really.
might do dumb things, but they weren't stupid.
No.
So,
Uh, how do you find singers that are fresh out of the university today?
um, the number one thing that I hear a lot of them saying is, they taught me how to perform, but I wasn't taught how to have a career. I didn't get any courses on managing money, how to decide what to pick.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing is, in America, at the major places like Indiana, Northwestern, I can't, Juilliard, you got to learn your stuff. Like, it was expected, I don't, whatever language there was on the earth that the music was written in, it was expected I was going to sing it in the original language. So Russian, French, Italian, German, Slavic, Portuguese, Polish. Chicago has a huge Polish population. I'm not sure the rest of the world prepares its singers the way United
No.
States singers.
American singers are expected to sing in every language there is, and
Right.
yeah, I don't find that kind of fair, but it's part of the rules, I guess.
Right. The hardest one to sing in, well, Russian was hard to learn because there's 3 L's, la, ol, and la. And Stravinsky, goes at 3,000 miles an hour, and you're
Sure.
trying to sing Sachi Bashi Naru Bashi Dabri. It's like that amazing. That was the hard. Having done voiceovers for
Hmm.
puppets and stuff like that really helped with my singing, because you can change the way you produce your voice
Uh-huh.
to match the language or the character you have to sing in. Like, for a tenor, there's high larynx, which is Dudley Do Right,
Right.
and then there's the normal larynx, which is like this. And in a musical, if you're cast as, like, the comedy relief, which I always was, you have to make sure that your vocal production makes the baritone or bass seem much more masculine. Like in Beauty and the Beast, gosh, it disturbs me to see you, Gaston, looking so down in the dumps. That's how you sing, because he's going to sing, "When I was a lad, I ate 4 dozen eggs every morning to help me get large." He's going to have, or funny thing happened on the way to the forum. You know,
Right.
the tenors have to be wimps and the basses have to be masculine like this. So doing voiceovers and puppet voices helped me learn how to control my throat
Hmm.
so that I could perform stuff without killing myself.
Wow.
I got my first solo with the Chicago Symphony because Miss Hillis, the genius, I was understudying the tenor soloist in that, in the performance. They had this thing at Chicago Symphony where there would be understudies from the chorus that if a regular soloist got
Yes.
sick, you sat on the end of the aisle and they tapped you on the shoulder. The conductor would, as he walked out, if he or she tapped you on the shoulder, your butt was up there with the big ones. Anyway, Miss Hillis said, we're doing the creation at Ravinia, and I'm not going to tell Jimmy Levine this, but I'm going to wait till dress rehearsal and say, Jimmy, did you hire the soloist for the final uh, uh, quartet because they never do. And she
Right.
says, that way maybe we can get all you guys in as soloists. So sure enough, Jimmy goes, oh no, Margaret, let the understudies do it. And that's how I got my first solo with
Isn't
Chicago
that something?
Symphony.
Isn't that something?
Margaret was one smart
Wow.
cookie.
Yeah, she was a wonderful woman. She really was. I mean, you worked with all these great names, these great actors, great singers. What was one of those performances where you walked off the side of the stage and you were walking off 4 feet off the ground because it was just so unbelievable?
There are two that would come to mind. One was Elijah at Ravinia with Cheryl Milnes,
Wow.
where, that's a really long work,
Yes, it
but
is.
it was so good that it was just as fresh and alive in the last chorus as it was in the first chorus. And you had Jesse Norman, Cheryl Milnes, Isola Jones, John
Wow.
Cheek,
Yeah.
Philip Creech. I think it was Yvonne Minton, maybe was the mezzo in that. And it's like, haha, I get to be up here with these guys. And
Sure.
then the Verdi Requiem with Leontine Price, Veriano Lucchetti, Jose Van Dam,
Wow.
and I think that was Janet Baker.
Wow.
Very first concert with the symphony was Verdi Four Sacred Pieces and William Walton's Belshazzar's Feast.
Okay.
And we did it, after the first night. Schulte, it's the only time this has ever happened to me in my whole life. Ideas! I took it too fast. That was too fast. I won't do it that fast again. And he apologized. I
Wow.
mean, we were right with him every beat, but he said,
Sure.
it was too fast. And so he took it slower after that.
Oh
And
my
that's
goodness.
when, 9 Grammy Award winning records later with
Later,
him.
sure.
That's when, except for the Mahler Eighth, we recorded everything that passed in front of our face
Wow.
with him because he realized he had a chorus that could keep up with the orchestra.
Yeah.
And Miss Hillis said, I want a chorus of Verdi soloists who know how to listen and blend.
I
And
agree.
in the same time, you translate all that classical stuff to music comedy. It's the same voice. You
Mhm.
just, you may not pronounce the words with the same enunciation that you might sing when you're in the opera. You got to
Yeah.
be able to do the vernacular of where you're performing. So,
Sure.
I
Sure.
mean, and the greatest thing too was from a very early age on, my parents said, record everything you do. Our biggest regret is, we came up in the 40s, the 30s and 40s. There were no recordings.
Sure.
I have no recordings of
Mhm.
them. There was one record my mom made at a party of the Italian street song. But other than that, they had no recordings of any of their
Wow. That's a
performances, and they
shame.
performed all over Kingdom Come, and
Wow.
that was a great bit of advice. So I was very lucky. I tried to, as soon as I could, I documented what I did, and that's really
Go.
cool. If you take the job, you can't complain.
Right.
Sing the contract and shut up. That's what my dad said. They know you well, and like the Met calls and said, "Can you be here Sunday?" You absolutely can go to them and tell you that. But if they say we can't replace you, the Met has to wait.
If you had to condense your career into 2 parts, what would you say gave you the most training throughout your career?
How to work and how to study had to be doing musical theater summer stock
There
because
you
every
go.
2 weeks it's a different show.
Right.
And during the day, you're rehearsing one show and you're performing a different show at night. And then you've got your side scripts for a week from now where the next show comes. That's where you really learn, how to
Sure.
put in your homework. And I'm sure you know how much more respect you get when you show up on the first day with all your shit memorized.
That is correct.
You
Thank
know,
you.
and learn your stagecraft. Raise that messes around. You chew gum on stage, you're fired.
Huh.
So I don't chew gum to this day. I'm not sure that there's any venue for the young performers to learn all that kind of stuff now.
Agreed. That was my next point. We grew up in a different state of arts. There is very little theater etiquette. Number one, I don't think that they know the history of the field that they're in totally. And I find it a disgrace that, and I say this in mostly every interview, that you can go on this device and type in a singer and hear mostly everything that he's recorded. Not when we were young, when you had to go to the listening library
Yep.
and you would put on the headphones and you sit there for hours, pull out a score from the shelf, rent it out or borrow it, or whatever you want to call it in your library section. So, we had it a little tougher, but I think that we had the appreciation of doing the work, and that's what made it more interesting for us. And it gave us, I think, a better understanding of the craft.
Yeah.
Um,
I can't tell you how many singers, young singers, I hear where they think you get credit for trying. You know what? Don't sing Nessun Dorma. No, because if you sing that aria, there's two people they're going to compare you to, Mario Lanza and Enrico Caruso. You in that boat? I ain't in that boat. I might sing that if someone says we're doing a concert and we'd love you to sing that. For
mhm,
me, it was the serenade from the Student Prince.
right,
Overhead, the moon is beaming.
right.
But if you're gonna sing that, you darn well better have all those notes. So many young singers sing stuff that they shouldn't be singing. Well, you
Um,
have to have the technique. I mean, I think I've told you the story before. You know what happens when you get a cold on Broadway? 9 shows a week.
that's
And
exactly.
you darn well better have the technique to sing through when you're not feeling well. If someone says, I enjoyed your performance, you say, thank you very much.
There you
I
go.
hope you'll come back and see something again. Don't tell them, oh, I didn't do a good job, this, that, and you think, shut up and say thank you. That's it.
Exactly. If you wanted to listen to somebody and you had, now I know you have hundreds of different albums from 78s all the way up to CDs. Who are your go-to singers?
Well, do you know how famous singers tell you who the singer that's singing in their head when they sing? Mario Lanza.
Really?
Because like me, we done come from nothing,
Right.
and I love it in the great Caruso. And I sing tonight for the people in the balcony. You know, that's and Pavarotti was like that some too, because Pavarotti said he heard Mario Lanza in his head when he sings. For breathing, you Izio Pinza and
Mm,
phrase, because he was the same voice top to bottom,
yes.
and just a marvelous sound. 1,000 years ago, they used to teach you, you have your low, middle, and high register. No, no, no. My teacher, it's one voice. It's just like the piano keyboard. You want a low note, you play that note. You want a high note, you play that note. So Izio Pinza, Mario
Mark,
Lanza.
I have to tell you, you're a very giving person. You're extremely talented. Your knowledge of musical history is just beyond belief. You can. I mention a song, or you mention it, and you come with it in seconds.
Defect, and that's an oral photographic memory, if I'm paying
Wow,
attention, which isn't as much anymore. But I'm not a great sight reader. I just remember everything I ever sang.
wow, isn't
But,
that
well, I
something?
actually am a good sight reader. But I
Yeah.
mean, once I've sung it and it's in there forever.
Wow, it's really uncanny. I have to say. I mean, I can't remember what I did 2 seconds ago,
Yeah,
and yeah, and that's the truth. And it's something that I've always admired, and it was just
thanks.
it's really almost computer esque. It really is the way that you could do that, which is has always fascinated me. The more than that is number one, your friendship, and I have to thank you for
Oh,
all the years. Never, I have yet to say, Mark, could you help me? And you say no.
I'd
And
never say no to you.
thank
I
you.
could.
And I thank you for how you actually helped me set
Oh,
up masterclass number one.
no problem.
We did, there was a long hours sometimes. Your talent, your gifts and are so greatly appreciated. I miss the days that we can actually just bullshit and come together, and everything today is just so spread apart because of the times. And
Right.
I miss
Well,
sitting down with you guys and having a cocktail or two. Or
like you said, this is an unbelievable gift. Human beings are the only ones that do art like this.
yes,
And there's so much of it that's being missed out by the current generation. There's no full-time classical music station in Philadelphia.
nope,
And like when it's all over, we'll be up in that heavenly choir, and the Lord will still go too much tenor.
There you go. We're going to close with that one. Welcome today's guest, Mezzo Soprano Jody Kidwell. Jody, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here, John.
I have a few questions which I want to lead into. Where are you originally from?
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. That's where I was born.
Okay. And when you were in Columbus, did your parents, either one of them, have musical talent?
Actually, my entire family extended everybody had some sort of musical talent.
Really?
They either played piano or violin. My father played mandolin. The Kidwell family, apparently, and this is something I found out recently, they did shows, variety shows.
Really?
My aunt, my dad, everybody as a kid was in the show, and I only found this out recently. I do have a cousin that writes jingles in California.
Really?
And has had a career at that. And my oldest sister is a pianist, and she has several CDs out of music that she's written. So yeah, wow. It's kind of through the family.
Wow. Your first formal lesson, and what was it in?
My first lesson occurred when I was 5 years old, and it was a piano lesson. I started piano and choir the same year at the church because people discovered I had some musical ability. I sang so loudly compared to the other kids that they all laughed at me.
Really?
And then I quit because I didn't want to be made fun of.
Sure.
And yeah, so it was another year later I entered the choir and I started piano lessons. And I wanted to be a pianist. I did not want to be a singer.
Really? Wow. That's interesting. Yeah. When did you make the transformation into singing?
In high school, I was still going to be I was a piano major my first year in college, a performance piano. Yes. And in high school, I performed a role in, believe it or not, Man of La Mancha. I was Aldonza Dulcinea.
Really?
15 going on 16. And, but the drama of that role brought out, a lot in me. And, and I was maybe a little, as a teenager, I was kind of, over the top, if one could be that. At 16, I was. And so that kind of got the nugget of, I liked being on stage. The reason I changed is actually life happened. A tragedy in my life made me want to not be in a room by myself practicing piano all day. And instead I started to sing to kind of heal my soul. And so I thought, well, I'll just do this instead for now. And as it turned out, I ended up going back to school the following year as a voice major.
And who did you work with back then?
At Ohio State, I worked with a man named Paul Hickfang. That's a name for you.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
He was 6'6", and he was a bass, a true bass.
And so did you go to grad school there also?
No. After Ohio State, you know, like all singers, when you finish undergrad school, you're like, well, what do I do next? You know, where do I go? So the first thing I did, I auditioned for the American Institute of Musical Studies, Graz, in Graz, Austria.
Yes.
So I went over there that first summer after I graduated from high school, or from college, excuse me, and studied Lieder and German, of course, and realized I was 23 and I watched the older singers who were trying to start careers in Germany.
Okay.
And many of them were not ready. It was obvious to me. And I realized at that moment that I wasn't taking it as seriously as I should if I wanted any career in the future at all.
Sure, right.
And then I got on a concert there. I got to sing with the orchestra in the Minoritensaal in Graz, and I sang 2 Hugo Wolf Lieder.
Nice.
And they told me on Tuesday that I would be performing them on Friday evening.
Wow.
These were 2 songs I had never sung. And in 3 days, I was coached and I learned this music and performed it by memory.
Wow.
And I learned quickly that if one can put one's mind to it, you can do anything in a matter of days. And that became a sort of a platform for me because that happened to me over and over in my career. After I finished Graz, I moved to Dallas, Texas to study with a woman I met in Graz. Her name was Sheila Harms. She was from Great Britain. She had gone to the Royal College of Music in London with Joan Sutherland.
Oh my.
She had won, I don't know if you know this woman, I've heard of her, Dame Clara Butt.
Yes.
She won the Dame Clara Butt Award over, and instead of Joan Sutherland. Wow. So that was her, you know, big thing. She was a great teacher and she was also a concert pianist.
Wow.
So when she walked up to me after I sang that night in Aquarian's Grab and Denk So Zela, she said, my dear, in a British accent, of course, you have a lovely voice. Someone needs to teach you how to sing. And I knew that she knew me. Right. She knew that I didn't know a thing about singing other than I could do it.
Right.
But I didn't know what I was doing, how I was doing it. And so I said to myself, she's the first person that's ever called me out on this. And I know she's right. And so I packed up my car with my cat. I had a white cat named George and all my stuff. And I had a sister that lived in Dallas. So I had $300. I drove to Dallas and got a job at Wonder Bread Hostess as an accountant, which was about a mile from her house. And I drove over to her house 3 times a week. She said, I will only teach you if you come 3 times a week.
Wow.
And she adjusted the price so I could afford that. And I went on my lunch break 3 times a week. And she taught me how to sing in 3 years. She actually said, if I can't teach you to sing in 3 years, no one can.
Did you feel that you were actually ready to sing by that time?
Yeah, I was ready to sing. However, something happened. Everyone started to tell me, you sound more like a soprano than a mezzo. You should be a soprano, you know. And I didn't like that. I tried it. I did try it for a year. I actually went to Rome, Italy to this summer program that I won't mention by name because it's a big sham. Right. But I went over to do the role of Fiordiligi in Così fan tutte. Yeah. I could sing Come Scoglio because, as you know, I had the top and the bottom and the rest.
Right.
And I was 26 then. And I went over and it was a horrible experience with this particular summer program that I ended up saying, I'm not performing, goodbye. That summer, I learned my mettle. I said, I'm not going to let people treat me badly.
Right. So now you left this program in Italy, and what did you do?
So I went back to Dallas, and I had auditioned for and had already been accepted to Southern Methodist University for my grad school.
Okay.
And I was going to study with Tommy Hayward, who was the tenor from the Met, you know, Lawrence Tibbetts' nephew.
Yep.
And I loved Tommy because he said to me, well, we became good friends, partly because my older sister had been an accompanist in his studio.
Oh, really? Wow.
When she went to school at Southern Methodist. He said to me one day, he goes, why are you here in Dallas, Texas? And by then I had studied, you know, several years with Sheila, and I was still, then I was a soprano. And I said, you know, I've transitioned to soprano. I don't believe I'm a soprano. Yes, there's some things I can sing. I was in the Dallas Opera Chorus as a soprano,
right,
which gave me great experiences, you know, with Maestro Roscigno and all of the people that came to sing there. And I said, I think I need to move because as much as I love Sheila and as much as she's taught me, she doesn't want me to be a mezzo, and I think I'm a mezzo. And he said, go up Northeast. And at that year, I had also met a tenor, Richard Brunner, who's in the Philadelphia. All right. He sang a small role at the Dallas Opera. And he said, try AVA or Curtis Institute. He said, go up there and sing for them. He said, that's what I did. I got on an airplane, flew to the, you know, stayed at the, whatever hotel is at the airport. I took a cab the next morning. My audition was at something like 10:30. Oof. Okay. And which is not a good time for me. But I got up at 6 a.m. and warmed up, sing Una Voce Poco Fa and Dorabella's aria, Ascoltati. And I got myself down to AVA, warmed up, went in and sang. And after I was done, they said, you know, we're putting you on hold. So come back in a while. You know, that didn't mean I was in, but it meant I was on hold. So I went out to lunch, came back and got in that day. I got to study with Beverly Wolf at AVA and
wonderful.
You know, and also another teacher that was only there for 1 year, Nancy Williams. And I loved her to death. And I didn't learn from her what I should have learned because it was my fault. I didn't understand what she was trying to teach me at the time. And now I think back to that 1 year and go, oh, okay. I stayed the full 4 years.
Okay.
I found it to be a wonderful experience for me.
Okay. Sing professional roles while you were at AVA, or did that come after AVA?
I did some at AVA, and matter of fact, that's very difficult to do because when you're still in school and you get a professional job, fortunately they were at least in town. I mean, because then they didn't really want us to do stuff out of school so much.
Exactly.
So I found myself sometimes having to come up with some creative, lies as to why, like for instance, one professional job I had, we were just staging one day, but I was supposed to be doing a dress rehearsal at AVA. So I said to my friends that were in the professional, I said, we're going out to dinner tonight, and then we're going to say we went out for shellfish, and tomorrow I'm going to be sick with food poisoning so I can be at AVA singing the dress rehearsal, which is exactly what I did, you know, and then I went back to the staging the day after. But to me, staging wasn't as important as a dress rehearsal. And even though one was a professional, you know, you have to sometimes throw your balls in the air and
see what sticks. That's right. How did you feel vocally at that point? Did you feel like you were ready to go?
Well, yeah, I thought I was settled. And then I found out a year or two later that no, I still needed to take lessons and coaching. I think it's important to study your whole life. And
Absolutely.
I think it's important to have ears that you trust as long as you can have those years in your life. For instance, Sheila, unfortunately, has passed. And she knew my voice when. And she's, you know, heard it over the years. Beverly Wolf has passed, you know, some of those people, but some of the coaches that I worked with at AVA at the very beginning, you know, like Richard Rao, people like that are all around and they do know my voice and they'll be very honest. And that's what I want. I want honesty.
Who do you feel who was in your career out of all the teachers that you had or coaches, who gave you the most polishing, do you feel, out of your career? And it could be from start to finish.
I mean, there's obviously more than one person, but I'm going to say the one person the number one person that I met is still at AVA, Chris Makatsouris.
Absolutely.
Chris Makatsouris taught me something that I saw out in the professional world, that if I prepared for Chris Makatsouris' level, that there wasn't a conductor that would be unhappy with me. And that
Genius.
always held true.
Genius. You're finished AVA. What do you do?
Fortunately, I had started a little bit of professional career. And also prior to going to AVA, and I didn't tell you about this yet, I did 2 seasons with the Ohio Light Opera.
Really?
Yes, Gilbert and Sullivan. And I will tell any singer, if at the beginning of your career you can get in that company,
really,
you know, you're going to work like a dog, because we worked from 9 to noon staging, from 1:30 till 5 staging, and then again 7 to 10.
Wow.
Every day of the week until we got the first 4 shows up.
Wow.
And you might have roles in 2 of the shows, and in the other 2 shows you're in the chorus. We did repertory 8 shows a week.
Wow. Jesus.
Literally. I know, it was insane. But I learned more from that job than I ever learned in college about how to put a role together, how to rehearse and get a character and get the laughs and get the whole thing. Because in Gilbert and Sullivan, they're laughs. And I was working with a man. I was often, as the mezzo, I was given those grand dame roles, the Grand Duchess and Kadishaw and all these things. And, you have to be pretty strong to pull off those roles.
Absolutely.
Oh, man, my first rehearsal of the Mikado, we did the staging, and then they wanted me to run it like I knew it. Really? And guess what? I did not know it well enough to run it.
Really? Wow.
And I got a dressing down in front of the whole company. My first day. You come back after lunch, this cold, or you are fired. Wow. And I was terrified.
Sure.
And I went to my room during lunch, put on the recording of the final act, the first act finale, and went over it and 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 over it. And when I went back to do the run through, I said, all right, Jody, this is not the time to pretend like, oh, you're the poor me.
Right.
I said, go out there and scare the shit out of those people. Excuse me.
Good for
scare them.
Yes.
Because she was menacing. So I came out with that fan, and I'm literally, the chorus was like trying to get away from me because they thought I was going to hit him. I was so into the character that he was so happy. He says, oh my God, how did you do that in 1 hour?
Really?
I said, because you scared the living shit out of me.
There you go.
I was so embarrassed and ashamed that I thought I could just waltz in here and, have 4 days to put a character together. No, you had like an hour.
You said you put on the recording. Who are your go-to people when you wanted to listen to something? Who was your go-to singers?
Ooh, well, I always listen to Marilyn Horne, of course. And I even listened to singers that didn't sing my rep. I mean, actually, I probably listened more to singers that didn't sing my rep than the people that did, because I didn't want to imitate people.
Right, exactly. Other than Horne, who would you listen to?
Well, of course, Beverly Sills, Pavarotti, those were the people that were really big in my day. Yeah. Of course, the kids today, they have the great resource of YouTube.
Well, see, that's the thing. See, everybody and their brother has this, but they don't. I say to myself, we had to go back, put the headphones on, go to the library.
Oh, yeah.
Who could afford albums? I mean, who could have even scores for that matter? We used to go to the library and pull the scores out of the library. Well, in your judgment, what does a singer have to do today at this time right now in the pandemic times that's out of the institutional situation to get themselves motivated and get themselves prepared for these up and coming professional roles?
Yeah, well, that's the hard thing, because I'm saying that to myself these days, because it is hard to motivate oneself right now.
Yes.
They're worried. Many of them want to maybe quit or go into another profession.
It's tough.
It is tough. And I keep saying to them, hold on, use this time to your benefit, learn repertoire, just even learn things that you don't even think you're ever going to sing. Just learn it, because you'll learn something from that. A Messiah concert, and I was a soloist, and I actually sang a concert with a mask on, a singer's mask. I don't want to do it again.
No.
If I can avoid it.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, I'd rather sing than not sing.
Then not sing. That's correct.
I would say for many of them to do this master class. I actually have a student I'm trying to get to do this.
Good.
And one that's just graduated from Eastman. I just listened to a recital yesterday. That's what you can do. You just put yourself out there in situations that make you uncomfortable.
Yes.
And learn to drive your vocal car through these. I use a lot of car analogies, but just keep at it. Just keep practicing. Just keep working on your technique, because the better your technique, the better you're going to this time.
Yeah.
And, it's tough for all of us. Be ready when the time comes, because you don't have a year then to get ready then.
How did you find the road itself? How did you deal with the sometimes loneliness of being in a hotel room or in an apartment?
Well, I always took things with me from home, little things. But the truth is, I don't get lonely when I'm on the road. I'm kind of an adventuresome spirit. And even so much that when I was a little kid, I used to run away from home when I was like 3 on my tricycle. And people would call and say, Jerry, I think your daughter's over here and it's like a mile from your house. How did she get? A lot of it was from the Pavarotti competition.
Yep.
Because it was international. And what happened was there was a contestant from Costa Rica who happened to sing either right before or after me. And the man that ran the company in Costa Rica was there to listen to her. And he liked my singing. And he asked her, he said, the Jody Kidwell, what was she like? And the girl said to him, oh, she was the only person that would speak to me. So next thing I know, I'm getting a call to come down and do the Italian Girl in Algiers. I did Isabella. That whole chain of events got me maybe 20, 30 jobs in Costa Rica and in Colombia, because then I met an agent in Costa Rica from Bogota, who then brought me down several times to do things.
One thing I have to say, and I don't know if you remember this, something happened to you or someone on stage, and you stepped in at the last minute at Opera Company in Philadelphia on the Saint of Bleecker Street.
Yep.
I don't think I was more blown away. Joni and I were sitting there, and we were, I guess, a stage right, and you were most of the time in front of it, because that was where the set had to be. And I think the tenor was Franco Farina, if I'm not mistaken. And I don't know what the situation was where the person got sick and they called you, or I don't know what the whole technical part of that. All I know is that you came in at the last minute, and I was mesmerized. I could not take my eyes off you. I thought that was some of the best singing I've ever heard anybody do. And
thank you.
That's the truth. It was a I think about it now, I'm getting a goosebump, really. And I'm saying to myself, she just came into this role. She just came into this role. She just came into this role. And you would thought you've done that 1,000 times. I have to say that was probably one of my fondest memories of you, that it just sticks in my head and I've never forgotten it.
I would have loved to have had an opportunity to do that role again. I was simply the understudy.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. See,
I had been asked to learn the aria, A Michele, don't you know? And because I was going to sing it for the Guild, but I was actually specifically informed that there would be no chance that I would ever do the role.
Really?
The person that had been, who was supposed to do it was Victoria Vergara.
She was doing a series of things with Philly at that time. She was
all these things from Menotti.
Right.
And, when you look at that role, if you don't know the opera and you look at that aria and you look at the role, it doesn't look difficult on the page. Exactly. So, and I had tried to sing that aria like a year or two prior to that, and I couldn't get through it. And so I went home and I said, all right, this is something I learned in Graz, Austria. They said, because every day in Austria and in Germany, you're not allowed to make noise, I think from 3 to 5 or 2 to 4, because people are having their siestas and their naps.
Right.
And if you make noise, the cops come, and they have come on me twice there because I was singing, I forgot. So in Austria, they said, go to your room and practice your music silently. You can learn just as quickly that way than if you sing it. And I never really believed that. So that's what I did with the role of Desideria. I did not one time for an entire week sing one note of that. I walked through the staging because I was watching the staging, opened my living room up, and every day, on the final day, I went over to Richard Raub's and I said, okay, I think I can sing this aria now. So we sang it and I sang through it and it was easy. And I went, what? I said, let's do that again. That was a mistake. I sang it a second time and it was easy.
Wow.
The next week, Menotti was there to direct. Yes. And Miss Vergara had become a little ill and maybe she hadn't, I don't know for sure, but she was having trouble with the role. Mm-hmm. And so she canceled the rehearsal that night. And I was there. And by then, Stephen Mercurio, who was conducting, said to me, said to Menotti, well, I heard Jody today and she knows that she can do he goes, no. He says, we can't do that. We'll wait. She'll come tomorrow. So the next day, she didn't come again.
Oh, boy.
And now the chorus is there to stage that act where, Michele stabs her. And Roman Tarlecki was there. And so they said, all right, we'll do it with Jody, like, there with the jukebox on the set. And Roman and I'm standing there and I say to myself, all right, now is not the time to act like the scared girl, this is a big chance. You're going to go out there and you're going to do this like you own it. And I just told myself that. Mm-hmm. And I said, if you make a mistake, who cares? Just keep going. Keep the intention of the character. So I did. I went through the whole thing. And the very end part where after she's been stabbed, what happens when you get stabbed in the back? What's your reaction? First, what happened? What? Disbelief, pain, blood. I went through the whole thing. Menotti started to cry. And the only reason I know this is because Jane Nemeth, who was there,
Jane, yes,
told me that he turned to her and was crying and said, oh my God, at last I have found my Desideria.
Wow.
And I know, to have someone tell you that Giancarlo Menotti said that. A couple days later was the Sitzprobe. Mm-hmm. And I was not singing the Sitzprobe.
Really?
It did not go well for Miss Vergara that day. Huh. Whether she was sick, I'm not sure, but they decided not to use her after that. And they called me and said, we want you to go on tomorrow night.
Tomorrow,
you get to do the dress rehearsal tomorrow, and then you'll go on. And then I did it. And that was one of the most thrilling 2 nights of my life because I was singing on a huge stage with big people, Franco Green, I know, and the big orchestra and Giancarlo Menotti. And, but I didn't know what to do with that after it was over.
What performance was it that when you turned and you're walking towards the wings, that you knew that the back of your hair was staying, that everything just went magically, perfectly in? It couldn't have been any better. And you walked off and you were 4 foot off the ground. What performance would that be?
I definitely Desideria. I felt like that. And I definitely felt like that after I had sung The Italian Girl in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. 5 performances of that role too. Wow. So Kevin Glavin was there with me. He was the Mustafa.
Always admired your talent. You were a wonderful musician. You were wonderful on stage. Your voice has been an inspiration to many. But what I am most impressed with is how fast you said yes when I asked you to do masterclass. And I find that to be an honor, or your wisdom that you impart on these young singers. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you. My mission as a teacher and as a singer, when I work with other singers, I want them to find the courage to be who they are and to experiment and to take chances and to not feel ashamed when it doesn't work out. Mm-hmm. Be courageous enough to show your soul.
Thanks for taking the walk down memory lane with me.
Absolutely. Thank you. I just, what did I say?